Hello, this is Thursday, March 19th, and we are going to be in your science book today. We have finished all of the reading for chapter 7. So I want to do some review and I want to talk to you about how you do your own review. Even though there's not going to be a test for this chapter, I want you to look back and I want you to review for yourself. Well, how do you do that? Do you go back to the beginning and do you just look through all the dark words? That's one way to do it. You could go back to the very beginning of the chapter and you could kind of flip through and as you go remind yourself of the things that we've done. One of the ways, though, the chapter gives you that helps you is at the very end of the chapter, and this is on page 192. You'll see a chapter summary. And the chapter summary gives you the words to know at the top, and it gives you the key ideas. It basically just asks you questions. Do you remember these things? And this is a really good way without a study guide. This is a way to make really basically your own study guide. And how do you figure this out on your own? And I want you to be able to have this skill. You're not always going to have a study guide that's teacher made. You're not always going to have a teacher who's going to say, you need to know this, and this. But you need to be able to study for a test just the same. And one way to do that is your own study. So you look at this. So let's look at this together. The words to know. Let's read those. Ecosystem, individual. Okay, that's the one thing. Population, community, habitat, niche. So as I go through this, I want you to think, do I know what that means? And if you don't, you need to look back and say, oh, maybe I forgot what a niche is. So I'm going to look back. I can either go back in the chapter, and that one's on 173, or you can go in the glossary. On 173, it says an organism's specific function or job in the ecosystem. I remember now. That means that animal, that's what that animal does. It says an animal's niche includes what it eats, when it eats, how it protects itself, and how it raises its young, how it fits into that community. Okay, back to our words to know. Producer. Producer gets its energy directly from the sun. Good. Consumer eats producers. Decomposer, food chain, predator, prey. Predator is the eater, the prey is the ET, the one eaten, right? Food web, that's a little different than food chain. Food chain is one thing, next, how the energy goes down on one through, one thing to one thing to one thing. A food web is how everything kind of interacts. This thing may eat this thing, and this thing eats that too, and this thing eats this, okay? We talked about both. Competition. You have to have competition in an ecosystem, right? Adaptations. The way that God made us God made those animals so that they could survive. Symbiosis. Remember, that has to do with the type of relationship that animals have with each other or plants have with animals. A parasite and a host. Those are some of the main words that we need to make sure that we know. Now, key ideas. Now, here's where you're going to look through each one and then look back. Recognize that ecosystems vary in size and include living and non-living things. Ecosystems have both. Got it? Got it. Next. Recognize that the environment determines the kinds of living things in an ecosystem. Okay, so the environment, the climate, what's around me determines what lives there, right? I'm not going to have cacti living in my yard. Why? Because it gets too cold here. I have friends who live in New Mexico, and when I went to visit their house, guess what they have in their yard? Dirt and rocks. Very little grass, very little trees. Most of their kind of, what do you call it, like landscaping in their yard was rocks and small things. It's not green like it is here, and that depends, and that will determine what lives there. Give an example of how a niche is unique to a population. Okay, so one specific thing, how one specific thing in that population meets a need. Maybe the Venus flytrap. Its niche is that it can eat insects. That's unique to its population. Describe what is needed for photosynthesis to happen. So look back. Where did it talk about photosynthesis? It was talking about that even just recently, right, on page 184 with plant adaptations. What is needed for that? Identify and describe, or identify characteristics and examples of producers, consumers, and decomposers. Identify and describe different groups of consumers. So what do we mean by that? Remember, that was our different groups of consumers is listed on page 174. That is when we're talking about herbivores, okay, only eat plants, omnivores, eat both, carnivores, eat meat. Those are your different types of consumers. Explain how producers and consumers get their energy. Producers get their energy directly from the sun. Consumers get their energy by eating the producers. Why do scavengers and decomposers, why are they beneficial to the ecosystems? Everything is beneficial, right? So they're breaking those things down. Scavengers kind of clean up the environment. They're the trash men, right? They're cleaning things up. Identify what types of living organisms are often the first two links of a food chain. So go back to your food chain page. 178. What's the top? What's the first link? The first link is the producer, and then the next one is usually a what? An herbivore, right? That's eating the producer only. Explain how changing one part of a food web affects other organisms. I change one thing. If I take out this grasshopper, that affects the next link, right? It affects the thing that would depend on that. Explain what an energy pyramid shows. Okay, so that was on page 180. What is that showing? That the most energy is at the bottom with the producers, right? And as it goes up, less energy is available. Discuss the benefits of competition. So when two or more organisms are trying to use the same resources, there's benefits to that. It says it helps keep the ecosystem balanced, right? Identify 4 basic needs. Oh, we talked about this just the other day. Food, water, protection from consumers, and shelter. See how this summary is helping us work our way through the chapter, bringing those things back to mind. Describe some ways that different plants meet their needs. Okay, so we talked, that goes into your adaptation section. Identify ways that some animals meet their needs. Explain reasons why some animals migrate. Why do they need to move? What happens during hibernation? Describe 3 types of symbiosis and give an example of each. This was just yesterday's lesson, right? We talked about the 3 types: parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. Contrast instincts and learned behaviors. Okay, that took you all the way through the chapter. Now, I want to show you just a few things. This is my Planet Earth book. This is the BBC Planet Earth, and it has amazing pictures, and it has amazing things about different animals. And I love to watch those videos, but I like to have the pictures in front of me too. But one thing that struck me, I want to share this with you if I haven't already. The very first page, the top words, right there, the very top words I'm going to read to you. It says, the Big Bang, cosmic dust, gravity, nuclear fusion, electrostatic forces, sunlight, liquid water, a collision in space, a moon, a tilted axis, and in the end, a world that is uniquely fit for life. Consider our planet as a whole and all the living, breathing consequences of plain good luck. Think about that for a minute. That's in the beginning of this wonderful, beautiful book that is showing God's creation. But are they recognizing it as God's creation? No. All of these things are a consequence of plain good luck. Isn't that amazing? That we would have sunlight, that we would have liquid water, that we would have a tilted axis, we would have a world, and they even say uniquely fit for life. Plain luck. Do you agree with that? I don't. When I look through this book, I see examples of God's care for his creation. I see examples of God's creativity. I see examples of God's perfect plan for creation. I do not anywhere see luck. Okay, so I'm going to show you some pictures in this book of some of the animals, and I want us to talk about some of the things that we've talked about in this chapter. Okay, think about the characteristics, think about their interactions, think about what type of consumer they are. If they have habits what are their adaptations, like migration or hibernation. So the first one are these elephants here. So look, they're already in a group. We talked about animals being in a group and that being able to help them protect themselves, get from one place to another. That in itself is an adaptation. Think about what they need. Look at how dry and dusty that is where they are. What do they need to do that? That thick skin. That they are uniquely created for where they are having to live. They also travel far ways to find water when it dries up where they are. They have to travel to different water sources. Okay, now look at these guys. Look at that. How amazing is that? That is a mother humpback and her calf in the warm waters of Tonga. When the calf is strong enough to leave, she goes there to have her calf, goes to warm waters. Then when it's strong enough and she's raised it there for a while, they both travel all the way back to colder waters. It says they will make a great migration south to krill-rich cold waters where they will spend the southern summer feeding. Humpbacks make the longest confirmed migration of any marine, that's water, mammal, and can survive on their fat reserves for up to 8 months. Isn't that amazing? So they migrate. But I love how those videos that we watched, the one we watched, the bear and the salmon, how it shows that it is necessary for these animals to do what they do, or they will die if they don't get there in time, if they don't get the food. So isn't it amazing that they just know when? That they know when to go and the food is there perfectly. God has created all of these things to work together, to interact together for survival. Look at all that group of penguins. Isn't that cool? I would love to see that, wouldn't you? I'd have to be pretty bundled up too, but it says that emperors making the long march back over the sea ice to relieve their mates and feed their growing chicks. The emperor's reward for incubating their eggs in winter is that their chicks hatch in the spring and have the whole of the short summer to grow and eventually fledge. The males do the incubation. They sit on the eggs. But once the chicks have hatched, they hand them over to the females, and they walk back to the sea to feed up after months of starvation and return with food for their young. So they kind of take turns. That's kind of neat how that works out. Here's another. This one, the adaptations that this thing would have to have is absolutely amazing. Look at that. Okay. That's the American mountain goat built for mountaineering with a deep chest and massive shoulder muscles, relatively short legs, and special traction pads on its hooves. Its long, thick coat enables it to withstand the severest of winters. God-given abilities right there to be able to be where it needs to be. Now this thing I would encourage you to look up because the pictures here don't do it justice and the videos are kind of neat. Look at that thing. It just looks like kind of a blob. You can't even see it really well right now. And there it is feeding. Do you see it with a fish in its mouth? This is a pretty cool thing. I want you to try to find a video of it. It is called a Japanese giant salamander. and it sleeps in the daytime in its little cave. And giant salamanders are the world's largest amphibians, which can grow to almost 6.5 feet. That's longer than a man. And live to be 80. That's pretty cool. 80 years old. And this is showing its nocturnal snatch. At night, these enormous predators emerge from their daytime sleeping dens to hunt for fish, and they just sneak out and grab it. That's cool. Ooh, look at this guy. Now let's fasten. Look at this. Look how huge that is. Look. Ooh. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but look behind it. Can you see right here its body? Just how big that is. That's more impressive than the head to me, because that was showing me just how enormous it is. A yellow anaconda, one of the top predators in the Pantanal. Oh, I was reading about the Pantanal just the other day. It will even feed on caimans. Oh, I was a little fascinated with the humpback and the mother humpback and the baby. There it is. See the baby underneath? She kind of protects it as they swim. She makes sure. And then I was watching a video about them the other day, and because they have to travel so far, if the baby kind of swims on top of the mom, and as it gets weaker and tired, she kind of comes up and it kind of sits on her back as they swim together. It kind of, the mom supports him as he goes. And then we even saw a video the other day of all of those, remember the TED Talk? And you can get on and watch that again if you want. By the way, TED Talks is an excellent thing to be doing during this time. You can get online and look up TED Talks for kids, and then there will be a list of them, and you can find them on the TED site, TED.com, or even on YouTube. You can find some TED Talks. But remember, we watched about the underwater creatures? Look at that. And he said that when you go far down, they glow. The small squid lives in the gloom of the twilight zone, as indicated by its large eyes. Should a bigger predator threaten, it can let out a confusing cloud of luminescent liquid, like to just kind of confuse it and not know what's going on. That's another adaptation that God created. Now look at all these different things. Look at that. Wild, huh? All of these things live in that way down at the bottom in the ocean. This says the rainbow colors. I guess this is the second one here, that middle, the rainbow colors of a sea gooseberry, interference patterns caused by the beating rows of cilia along its body. Despite its beauty, a sea gooseberry is an effective predator which uses two long, sticky tentacles to ensnare its copepod prey. Very cool. Do you realize just how many things there are to learn? It blows my mind sometimes when I think about all that is out there that I don't know, and I get a little greedy. I'm like, oh, I want to know more. I want to know more. There's so much out there, and I don't even know what's out there. Use this time to just like I said the other day, let one thing lead to another, lead to another, lead to another, and find something new out every day, and then share it with me. Put it down here on the comments so I can see too. I want to learn, and you can really help teach me during this time. I don't have access to the internet like some of you do, and I can't sit and search like I would love to. Okay, now today I do want you to finish up this chapter by doing this thinking through. Thinking through is page 130, and it gives you 3 different questions, and they're just more of thinking questions. Based on what you already know, answer these 3 questions, and it's just going to allow you to review what you've already put together over this whole chapter. And then in the comment section of this video, I want you to answer, which ecosystem would you want to visit and why? So of all the ecosystems that we talked about, and you can even go back to chapter 6 for this, look at those ecosystems. Which one of those would you want to visit and why? I hope you're having a great day in your own little ecosystem. Stay safe. I love you all.